Coming up here on PFN's NFL Draft Insiders, we'll give you the very latest on what Tony Pauline's hearing about Carson Wentz, Sam Darnold, and other quarterbacks around the league. Tony, following the Super Bowl, you broke news with more information on Carson Wentz, Sam Darnold, and others on the quarterback carousel. Let's begin with Carson Wentz. You said the Bears appear to be the favorite, but the Colts and 49ers are showing interest as well. After you broke this report on ProFootballNetwork.com on Sunday evening following the Super Bowl, ESPN confirmed that Chicago and the Colts were the top suitors for Wentz. And it came out that Wentz would prefer the Colts over the Bears. Now, that's not much of a surprise considering the instability in Chicago with Pace and Nagy on the hot seat going into this season. But, looking at all of that, what do you make of Wentz being on the trade block and all of this with the Colts, the 49ers, the Bears, and everything else involved here?
No surprise. I mean, we talked last week. The situation with Carson Wentz in Philadelphia was a situation with the organization where it's untenable. People thought the problem was, or there was a personality conflict between Carson Wentz and Doug Peterson. As I reported last week, it was also people in the front office. So it seems like a situation where the two sides just can't work together, and you're going to have to try and get rid of Carson Wentz. Not surprised with Indianapolis, because Indianapolis also has an outstanding quarterback coach in Frank Reich, a guy that a lot of people like, a lot of people respect. So you could see why he would want to go there. Plus, they've got some very good offensive linemen. I think the situation is compensation and how movable is that Wentz contract, because he is getting a significant amount of money from the deal that he signed in June of 2019. The Bears, obviously, they're going to need a quarterback. They didn't give Mitch Trubisky the fifth-year option. They had talked about, even though they weren't giving the fifth-year option, maybe trying to sign him after the season. I've not heard anything about that. The Bears feel that they are a few players away from basically moving to the next level. They made a late-season push last year. Is Carson Wentz that final piece? Who knows? Whatever team trades for Carson Wentz is going to have to get him back to where he was, with playing at almost an MVP level before all the injuries hit. Can they do that? Oftentimes a change of scenery will lead to that.
The irony there, Tony, is that Nick Foles is in Chicago, and if Wentz goes to Chicago, he's reunited with Nick Foles, who was kind of the thorn in his side in Philly, if you want to say. And then, but Foles has been involved in trade rumors that he would go back to Philadelphia in a possible package if Wentz goes to the Bears, which is even more ironic. But you also have Mitch Trubisky there in Chicago, right? And so he's a free agent. If Wentz comes, Trubisky's definitely out. His status is kind of up in the air right now. Chicago's trying to see what they're going to do with him. You mentioned that Denver would be a possibility for a guy like Trubisky, but the Broncos have Drew Lock. So what are you hearing about what people in Broncos land feel about their quarterback that they just drafted a few years ago?
I've heard everything from people who are not sold on Drew Lock to people who are down on Drew Lock. And I heard this at the Senior Bowl with people who are intimate with the Broncos. They know the ongoings. And what I was told is, basically, we know Drew Lock has had his moments. He's also had a lot of injuries. But what I found out at the Senior Bowl is the Denver Broncos have had to kind of slim down the playbook, take things out of the playbook that Drew Lock can't run. It was said to me, or was implied to me without saying it, is that they've almost had to dummy down the playbook so Drew Lock can handle it. That's a major concern. It's also not surprising. We've seen some of these quarterbacks that have come out of Missouri, Blaine Gabbert, now Drew Lock, playing that wide open system at Missouri. All of a sudden now, more reads, more complicated offense in the NFL. They can't handle it. This is the basically or get off the pot year for Drew Lock. And people I spoke with at the Senior Bowl feel that basically the Broncos are going to have to move on primarily because Drew Lock cannot handle a complex offense.
There's been a lot of chatter about Drew Lock, as you alluded to, as you noted. Drew Lock burst onto the scene in 2019. Not really burst onto the scene, but kind of thrown into the fire a little bit. Threw for 1,020 yards, 7 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. A lot of people were excited and bullish on his potential coming into the 2020 season. And this year, 57.3 completion percentage, down from last year's 64.1. Did throw for nearly 3,000 yards, but had a 16 to 15 touchdown interception ratio. Had a QB rating of 75.4. You're right. The year 3 is the year for Drew Lock. But I expect the Broncos to bring in competition for him, and it could be Trubisky, and we'll have to kind of see how that plays out.
And that's what I'm hearing about Trubisky is he's going to have to go to a place. I mentioned the Broncos. I also mentioned the Ravens, where he's going to have to fight to be a starting quarterback at the next level. You know, the thing about Locke was it was a good pick by the Denver Broncos. You can't blame him because a lot of people, if you remember, were mocking Drew Lock as a top 10 pick to the Denver Broncos. The Broncos made a couple of trades in that draft. They ended up getting Drew Lock in the middle of round 2. So at the time, it seemed like a fantastic pick. You can't blame him for the selection. If the quarterback doesn't pan out or he doesn't show signs of panning out, they're just going to have to move on.
Let's move over to AFC East and Sam Darnold and the New York Jets. You've been talking about the Jets and Sam for the past several weeks. Rumors are more the result, as you noted in your story on Sunday following the Super Bowl, which you broke on ProFootballNetwork.com, that these are more about teams inquiring about Sam Darnold rather than the Jets actively shopping their 2018 first-round pick. However, sources have told you that they feel it's a real possibility the Colts end up with Darnold. Colts seem to be in every conversation, as do the 49ers seem to be in every quarterback conversation as well. But in the same breath, sources are also telling you that it would be a mistake to trade Sam Darnold because they feel that he has not even come close to his potential yet. He had Adam Gase there. These are not what sources told you, but this is my thoughts. Adam Gase there, and we saw what happened to Ryan Tannehill when he got out of Adam Gase's shadow. Rich Cimini of ESPN also confirmed what you were saying, that people in the league are telling him it would be a mistake to trade him. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, a couple things. You know, what I'm hearing is, as you said, the Jets aren't trying to trade. Darnold's not on the trading block. Rather, people are making inquiries. If the Jets get a huge offer, maybe they go that way. And what I was told is the teams that seem to be the most interested are the Indianapolis Colts, who need a quarterback, and the San Francisco 49ers. Now, the 49ers, the belief is Darnold would be perfect to run that system. They may have had it with Jimmy Garoppolo. So I don't know that it's imminent that he's going to get traded to one of those two teams. I think one of those two teams would have to just bowl the Jets over with a huge offer in order for the Jets to trade him there. Of course, as I said in the article, it would be really ironic, very ironic, if the Indianapolis Colts trade for Sam Darnold, because that was a team that the Jets traded with before the 2018 draft to move up 3 spots to get a quarterback, and that quarterback turned out to be Sam Darnold. There is a large faction of people in the league who believe that Sam Darnold is still a very good quarterback. As you pointed out, it's been the bigger issue has been the coaching the past 2 years under Adam Gase. It was a disaster. They feel that with Joe Douglas running the show and bringing in necessary talent, as we saw last year with Mekhi Becton, as well as Denzel Mims, getting more pieces to the puzzle on the offensive line, some offensive skill players, as well as the coaching with Saleh and LaFleur, that will help basically get Darnold back to where he was at the end of his rookie year, where he showed tremendous progress and he looked like the quarterback the Jets hoped he would be. It's going to be it'll be interesting to see how it pans out as we get closer to the draft. I don't think a decision has to be made right now by the Jets. I think the Jets are playing the smart. Listen to the offers, or, don't put them out on the block, see who's interested in them, and then take it from there. Listen, you still got the pre-draft interviews. They still have to basically come up with their final grades for guys like Zach Wilson and Justin Fields. Maybe trade down and look at a guy like Mac Jones. These are all options that are on the table that should be on the table basically before the second week of February is over.
It's, connect the dots here, right? You say that Sam Darnold and others believe that Sam Darnold will be a great fit in Kyle Shanahan's offense, right? But you have LaFleur coming over, you have Saleh coming over from that system that have seen that up close and personal, and LaFleur is going to bring concepts from Shanahan. So it would make sense, and especially a guy like Joe Douglas, who believes in building the trenches, right? You have your franchise quarterback, let's say. You are sitting there with 2, while the smart money would probably be on someone trading up into that spot to get a Justin Fields or Zach Wilson. If the Jets stay there, they can draft Penei Sewell, and they have him and Becton as the cornerstones of their offensive line, like you've mentioned many times before, for years to come. You put Darnold there, you get his skill players around him. Remember, the Jets also have another first-round pick from the Seahawks in the Jamal Adams trade. You get a wide receiver there. You get a running back, perhaps maybe Najee Harris or something like that. And you just start building around Sam Darnold. I think there's a lot of potential for Darnold in New York if they do decide to stay the course there.
The Jets are in a very good spot. And the Jets are the whipping boys because they make a lot of dumb decisions, so they have in the past. But the fact is, you look at them, they got the second pick of the draft. They can draft a quarterback. They can keep their quarterback, Sam Darnold, and trade back. They can maybe trade Sam Darnold for a bunch of selections, even move back and get another quarterback, they're in a good spot. And I know that everybody in Jetland wants wanted the answers yesterday, and they want that answer to be Deshaun Watson, which I don't think is going to happen. Jets are playing the smart. Jets are in a good position. Jet fans just have to be patient.
Speaking of Deshaun Watson, Rich Cimini mentioned in his report that the one thing they can't do is allow themselves to be held hostage by the Watson stalemate in Houston. Now, you said last week that Houston does not want to trade Watson, and they have not budged off this in all the media reports that have been coming out since then. Now, what was interesting is that on Wednesday, Texans president Jamie Roots resigned. Have you heard anything about, is this part of the plan to appease Deshaun Watson and keep him happy with the Texans?
Absolutely not. I think at this point in time, the only thing that would appease Deshaun Watson is the Houston Texans firing Jack Easterby. Let's go back to what I said last week. A lot of people thought that Deshaun Watson was upset that the Texans hired Nick Caserio as their general manager. I was told he was upset with the fact that he lost out to Jack Easterby. And there are a lot of people when you in the league, if you talk to them, kind of shake their head and raise their eyebrows about Jack Easterby. The fact that he's running the show in Texas with the Texans, I should say, in Houston has, if not raised a lot of eyebrows, has raised a lot of questions from people in the league. So I think the resignation of Roots has nothing to do with Deshaun Watson. I think the only thing that would really appease and settle Deshaun Watson now and have him openly come back to the Houston Texans is if they get rid of Jack Easterby.
There's a lot of movement to take place on this quarterback carousel over the next few weeks, months. Free agency starts in about a month from now. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be wild. Chances are Wentz gets moved. Darnold might get moved. Who knows with Watson? One thing for sure, though, it's going to be a very, very interesting few weeks and months leading up to draft season in the NFL draft and see how this all shakes out.